When you think of MMOs, you probably think of long-standing titles like EverQuest, Ultima Online, World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy 11 and 14. But what about the MMOs that never live up to their potential or didn't really have potential in the first place? You know, the short-lived MMOs. Making MMOs is hard. It takes a long time and a lot of money. So even the ones that don't necessarily do well tend to sit around in maintenance mode for a long time, trying to at least recoup some of that time and investment that went into it. That doesn't always happen. Now, the original plan for this video was to cover just the shortest lived MMO, but that made this video too short. So instead of just covering the Guinness World Record holder for shortest lived MMO, we're also going to look at a couple different games that ended too soon. And I'm curious, at the end of this, I want to know, out of those games, which one do you agree ended too soon? I'll give you my opinion of which one it was, but I want to know which one to you ended too soon. And if it's one that's not on the list, a different game, because there's a lot of MMOs that became loved by different people, but ended before they could really make their own mark in the MMO genre. The shortest MMO ever was APB, All Points Bulletin. All Points Bulletin lasted 79 days. 79 freaking days. It was launched by Real Time Worlds on June 29th, 2010, until its closure on September 16th, 2010. I don't even think I've had relationships that short. Ludwig's Subathon lasted shorter than that, but there's currently a couple subathons that would have seen the start and end of this game before the subathons have ended. Hell, it was longer between the launch of Halo Infinite and the most recent Season 2 update. There's initial feeling, for me at least, that this is like almost like a joke, right? I mean, 79 days. Really? It's just ridiculous. But on reflection, it's pretty sad. As gamers, we get pretty jaded. We can often feel like companies are reaching through our screens to grab our wallets. And while sometimes that's true, I mean, it is still a profit-based industry, there's another side to it. There are people putting in hours and hours and days and months and years into making these games, where this is their passion and they're putting their all into it. They're trying to make something. Game making is still a creative process. And for some of these people to see that all those years of work end in 79 days, that's just gotta be really disheartening. It took me 2 years to write my first book. I can only imagine how I would feel if Amazon pulled my book 79 days after I published it, just because of poor sales. You know, thinking about it now, maybe my first initial humorous thoughts about this make me kind of a dick. I'm sorry, APB. There's not a whole lot of meat to the story of its closure. It was one of the most expensive games developed at the time, reportedly costing over $100 million. Funding wasn't there, and Real Time Worlds went into administration while trying to find a buyer. And unfortunately, they couldn't find a buyer before the closure of the studio that wanted to run it as a live title, despite some interest from companies like Epic, right up until the last minute. Thus, APB shut down after 79 days and earned a place in the Guinness Book of World Records. It's not all gloom and doom though for APB, because it was later purchased for $1.5 million by K2 Network under the subsidiary company Reloaded Productions. They're now currently existing as a merged company, Reloaded Games. The game was rebranded as APB Reloaded, original, I know, and released as a free-to-play title. APB Reloaded launched on December 6th of 2011 on Steam and currently has mixed reviews. What about the other games? The games that maybe lasted quite a bit longer, a lot longer than APB, but still felt like they ended too soon. The games that did not get to celebrate their 10, 15, 20-year anniversaries, like stalwarts like EverQuest or World of Warcraft. What about those games? The ones that left us too soon. Well, I pulled up a list of a couple that I think are gone too soon, and I'm curious to know what you think. This is my point in the video where I ask you, if you're enjoying this, please consider leaving a like on the video. It will help me a ton and it'll make this video get to more people so you can see what their opinions are that you so kindly are going to leave in the comments down below. So, without further ado, let's jump into them. First one on the list for me is going to be Warhammer Online Age of Reckoning. Warhammer Online was a PvP-centric MMO that must have dumped a substantial portion of their budget into licensing for the Warhammer IP. It innovated the genre with public quests, which would later be used in other games like EverQuest 2, Rift, and Final Fantasy XIV. Warhammer Online lasted from September of 2008 until its closure in 2013. It was a game that suffered for losing its population and struggled going up against some of the really stiff competition that was out there. Next on the list is going to be Tabula Rasa. Tabula Rasa lasted from November of 2007 to February of 2009. Not a long time by any imagination for an MMO. Unless you're APB. God damn it, I said I was mean again about the game. I'm sorry, it's just there. It's like sitting there, like tempting me. In a time of fantasy MMOs led by World of Warcraft and to a lesser extent EverQuest, Richard Garriott's sci-fi adventure entered the chat and subsequently failed, despite an ill-fated attempt at a free-to-play which only lasted about a month and a half. A game built on the back of a war between humans and an aggressive alien force known as the Bane, it had promise that was ultimately fractured with Richard Garriott either being forced out of NCSoft or leaving. But on the subject of sci-fi MMOs, I have to go with one of my absolute favorites that decided to shoot itself in the foot with a blaster. Star Wars Galaxies Online. Star Wars Galaxies Online lasted from 2003 to 2011, but for many it died in 2005 with the new NGE, or New Game Enhancement. Perhaps one of my favorite games on the list, Star Wars Galaxies was a sandbox game that launched right before the colossal switch under World of Warcraft to theme parks and quest hopping. SWG had entire classes dedicated to non-combat, the entertainer and the crafter. But even in that, those classes were built off class trees, giving you freedom and limits to be what you want to be. Entire harvesting firms built up on planets familiar to anyone who loved the IP. The game lacked any type of PvE endgame you might expect if you were playing games like EverQuest, but it was still charming and a love title that may have been one of the first games to destroy itself. While the new game enhancements in 2005 are still liked by some, the vast majority did not enjoy them. It saw the end of active development on the game, as no further expansions were launched for the game from 2005 on, until its eventual closure in 2011. Now, City of Heroes. City of Heroes actually lasted a pretty long time compared to some of the games on this list, from April of 2004 until November of 2012. This was a game, if you ever wanted to be a superhero, this was it. The game felt innovative if just for the setting. It'd later be followed by other superhero games, including ones from established IPs like DC, but City of Heroes dared to be different and had a passionate player base of defenders for the title. They had a feature that I think more MMOs should look into, and I've only really seen it in City of Heroes and EverQuest 2. Maybe some of y'all can correct me and tell me down below other games that have a mentor feature. In City of Heroes, it was called the Sidekick or Exemplar system. Systems like these connect players of different time investment, allowing friends to play together. Really, this should be the goal of MMOs, let people play together. Now, these next two on the list, they take special consideration for me, because these next two games are ones that are near and dear to my heart. I guess also so with Star Wars. A lot of these games are near and dear to my heart. I don't know if it's becoming clear yet. I've played a lot of MMOs over the years, and sadly, a lot of them are on this list. Can we just, I would like to go back and play some of these games. I guess emulation servers exist. Dear sweet Vanguard, how I loved you. A game that launched too early and at the wrong damn time. Like the next game on this list, Vanguard had interesting races and classes, unique systems like the diplomacy system, and an expansive world. Perhaps too expansive. Sure, you could build boats, but they were buggy. You could PvE, but bugs. The game just simply wasn't finished. Rushed out the door before it could reach its potential. Vanguard to me will always be the what if game. It lasted from January of 2007 until July of 2014. Now perhaps the most different game on this list because of its hardcore PvP focus. is Shadowbane. Shadowbane was the brainchild of J. Todd Coleman, who most recently oversaw the somewhat failed but still on life support launch of Crowfall. This game brought the hard edge of games like Ultima Online back to the genre after stagnation in more PvE-centric games. It launched during the heyday of EverQuest and died in the shadow of World of Warcraft. It had plenty of unique features like the discipline system, which allowed more class freedom than other games, but the hardcore PvP may have turned some players off, being the lifeblood for many. There was a period of time when one of my favorite web comics, GU Comics, brought out the Bug Zapper, recurring comic that would show the games that were closing. The fact that there was a recurring comic with all these different games closing was disheartening. It was a dark time for MMOs. And some games, like Star Wars Galaxies, died long before they closed. Others just struggled out of the gate and really were in maintenance mode from the time they started. There's a whole time period here from the launch of World of Warcraft really through the early 2010s where games tried to be the next World of Warcraft. The term WoW killer has become synonymous with the MMO genre because that game just dominated the space in a way that had not been seen before. Before World of Warcraft, there was EverQuest. EverQuest had astronomical numbers for an MMO, and then World of Warcraft made those numbers look like nothing. And it felt like it was almost overnight. You had this incredible thing where you had major commercials on TV and it was in a time that everyone wanted to be that. There was this realization that World of Warcraft was this new phenomenon, and by it, MMOs. And everyone wanted to bottle up a piece of that. I think that's a whole other video. But it's an interesting thing here when we're talking about these MMOs because so many of them stumbled under that shadow. And it's funny because if I tried here to do what Mr. Beast does, I would fail. That is not what this channel is about. That's not how this channel would work. I have my niche, depending on what that is. And I need to stick to that, or you're all gonna leave. So the idea that all these MMOs were trying to chase that is probably why a lot of them failed, and why we don't have a lot of them today. My name is Redbeard Flynn. I hope you enjoyed this video. I certainly enjoyed putting it together, and I look forward to seeing you again next week.